The last time my mother asked me when I was going to get a real job, I was standing in her garage holding the lamp that ended up buying my house. None of us knew that yet. That was probably why everybody laughed. My sister laughed first, then her husband, then my Uncle Kenny, who always laughed hardest when the joke was me. My dad didn't laugh much, but he gave me that tight little smirk he used to get whenever I proved something he already believed about me. I remember shifting the lamp under my arm because it was heavier than it looked, and because I didn't feel like looking any of them in the face. It was wrapped in an old moving blanket. There was dust on my jeans, dust on my shirt, and grease on one hand from the tailgate on my truck. I had spent almost everything I had left that morning to buy it. At that point, I still wasn't sure if I'd made the best buy of my life or just done something incredibly stupid. I come from the kind of family where work only counts if it looks miserable from the outside. My dad did maintenance at a paper plant for almost 30 years. My mother worked in medical billing and thought health insurance was basically proof of good character. My Uncle Kenny did HVAC and talked about real work, so often you'd think he invented it. My sister married the first decent guy with a steady paycheck, bought a house before she was 30, had 2 kids, and got very comfortable treating her version of life like the correct one. Then there was me. Before antiques, I worked warehouse jobs, delivery jobs, whatever paid enough to keep moving. I hated almost all of it. Not in a dramatic way. I just hated the feeling that every day looked exactly like the last one, right down to the break room smell and the same bad fluorescent lights over the same stacks of boxes I didn't care about. On weekends, I started going to estate sales and farm auctions just to get out of my head. At first, I bought little things. A box of junk jewelry that had one real gold pin in it. A pair of mid-century chairs I cleaned up and sold to a woman in Pittsburgh for 6 times what I paid. An old cast-iron bank I almost missed under a pile of Avon plates. I liked the work right away. Not because I thought it was easy. Most of the time it was sweaty, dirty, and full of small humiliations. You'd drive an hour to a sale, stand in a line with 10 other guys pretending not to watch each other, get inside, and realize the family had priced the good things off Google and the bad things off emotion. You hauled furniture in the rain. You sorted boxes that smelled like basements. You got burned. You learned. If you stuck with it long enough, your eye got better. Mine did. Not fast enough to impress anybody at home, though. I got laid off from an appliance warehouse when I was 31. They cut shifts, handed out severance, and that should have been the moment I went and found another forklift job. Instead, I looked at what I'd been making on the side, looked at the little bit of money I had saved, and decided to give buying and selling antiques a real shot. I told myself 6 months. That 6-month plan turned into 2 years of living in my parents' basement and getting treated like I was one step away from picking copper out of burned houses. I rented a storage unit. I cut my expenses down to almost nothing. I sold my newer truck and bought an older one that rattled over 55 and only shut properly if you slammed the driver's door twice. I was up before dawn most weekends, driving around western Pennsylvania and eastern Ohio with gas station coffee in one cup holder and auction slips in the other. Estate sales, flea markets, country auctions, cleanouts, church rummage sales. Some weeks I made real money. Some weeks I spent more on gas than I should have. That's how it goes until you either get better or quit. My family never saw any of that as work. They saw me carrying old stuff into the basement and decided the rest for themselves. My mother would leave job listings by the coffee maker, county maintenance, shipping warehouse, building supply yard. My dad called my inventory dead people's garbage. My sister told her oldest kid, right in front of me, Stay in school or you'll end up in strangers' basements digging through old junk. Her husband started calling me Sanford because he thought anything with dust on it was hilarious. Uncle Kenny liked asking if I'd found treasure that week or if I'd just gotten dirty again. It was never one giant blow-up. That almost would have been easier. It was just constant. A joke here, a look there, a little laugh when I came home with something big in the truck. The kind of disrespect that gets called concern after the fact. And to be fair, there were moments when I probably looked exactly like the loser they thought I was. I had a corner of the basement full of lampshades, old frames, 2 dressers waiting on hardware, a stack of rugs, boxes of silver plate, and a milk crate full of brass pulls and knobs. My storage unit looked like a condemned antique mall. I made mistakes. I bought fake enamel signs. I paid too much for a rare folk art piece that turned out to be maybe 20 years old. I drove almost 3 hours one time for what was supposed to be a stickly side table, and got there to find a decent reproduction with a fake mark. Nobody teaches you this business unless you get very lucky. Mostly you learn by overpaying and remembering how bad it felt. The lamp showed up on a Saturday in June. I found the sale the night before, scrolling estate listings half awake in the basement. Most of the photos were useless, which is normal. Cut glass, oak furniture, old Christmas decorations, a room full of costume jewelry laid out on towels. But one upstairs photo had a lamp in the background, near a window, and something about the shape made me stop and go back. It didn't scream money. That was the thing. A lot of good old leaded lamps don't. In bad pictures, they just sit there looking dark and heavy and a little wrong. This one had that look. Wide shade, muted glass, bronze base maybe. Could have been nothing. Could have been a 70s reproduction. Could have been exactly the kind of maybe that eats your rent money. I set my alarm for 4:30 anyway. By the time I got there, cars were already lined up on the road. I knew 2 of the buyers waiting outside. One only chased signs and gas station stuff. The other liked early lighting. Seeing him there tightened everything in my chest. Nobody said much. That's another thing about these sales. Grown men will stand in a driveway before sunrise with coffee going cold in their hands and act casual while they quietly hate each other. When the family opened the door, everybody pushed in hard. I went upstairs and tried not to move too fast. The room smelled like stale perfume and dust. There were sewing baskets, dresser scarves, costume brooches, a cedar chest, and the lamp on a little side table by the window. Up close, it looked better, also riskier. The shade was filthy with smoke and years of grime. One lower edge section was pushed in slightly, enough to make you notice. The base had real weight to it. The sockets looked old. The proportions were right. The cap felt right. None of that proves anything. Plenty of expensive mistakes have started with, "It felt right." The grandson running the sale came upstairs with blue tape and a marker. He looked maybe my age, maybe a little younger, tired in the way people look after cleaning out a dead relative's house for 2 weeks. I asked him what he wanted for the lamp. He looked at it and said, "Lamp and table, 1,200. I asked about just the lamp. 1,000. I had 860 in cash on me. The rest I could get, but only if I left. I asked if he could hold it for 10 minutes. He said no. Fair enough. I could feel another buyer behind me on the stairs. That was the whole decision. Not some genius moment. Not a movie. Just me standing in a hot room doing quick math with my heart beating too hard. I told him I'd take it. I handed over what cash I had, ran to the closest ATM, came back, paid the rest, and loaded that lamp into the back of my truck under blankets and an old tarp like I was hiding something from the law. The whole drive home, I kept trying to talk myself down. Maybe it was a nice reproduction. Maybe it was old, but not special. Maybe I just burned rent money because I wanted to be the smartest guy in the room for once. Then I got home and walked straight into the cookout in my parents' garage. I had forgotten my niece's graduation thing was that afternoon. Everybody was there. Folding chairs, paper plates, burgers, somebody's little kid crying because another kid took his bag of chips. I just wanted to get the lamp downstairs and out of the heat. My mother saw me first and said, "Oh, good. More junk." Then she asked, loud enough for everybody to hear, when I was planning to get a real job or if I was just going to keep dragging dead people's junk into her house until she died too. That got the big laugh. My sister leaned over and asked what haunted grandma object I'd bought this time. Her husband wanted to know how much I'd spent. I said 1,000 because there was no reason to lie about it. My dad finally looked up from his beer then. $1,000, he said. For that. Uncle Kenny laughed so hard he coughed. I don't remember saying a single thing back. I remember my face feeling hot. I remember shifting the lamp so I wouldn't drop it. I remember taking it downstairs while everybody kept talking upstairs, like I'd just given them the afternoon's entertainment. Later that night, after everyone left and the house finally got quiet, I cleaned a small section of it under the basement light with cotton swabs and mild soap. Not a full cleaning, just enough to see what was under the dirt. The bronze looked right. The glass looked right. The ware looked right. When I lifted the cap and checked the underside, I found a worn stamp that made my stomach drop once. Hard. Tiffany Studios, New York. That did not mean I had found a Tiffany lamp. It meant I had to stop getting excited and start being careful. Fake marks existed. Wishful thinking existed. Men a lot smarter than me had convinced themselves of expensive things in less evidence than that. I barely slept. The next morning, I took photos in better light and sent them to a lighting specialist outside Cleveland, whose name I'd gotten from another dealer a few months earlier. I'd never met her. We'd only emailed once or twice. She wrote back faster than I expected and said she wouldn't promise anything from pictures. But if I could bring it to her that week, she'd look at it. I borrowed my friend Nate's enclosed trailer because I didn't trust my truck bed. Nate helped me load it and took one look at my face and said, "Either that thing's real or you need a hobby that hurts less." That was about right. The specialist's office was plain. No dramatic showroom, no fake museum act. She spent maybe 40 minutes with the lamp, and those were the longest 40 minutes I can remember. She checked the hardware, the fit, the patina, the glass, the solder, the base, the repairs, everything. She didn't narrate what she was doing for me either. She just worked. Then she looked up and said, "It's right." That was it. 2 words. I had to sit down because my knees felt hollow. She went over the condition with me after that. The bent section would matter, of course. There was wear. There had been a repair. But the lamp was right. Good, honest, old, right. She gave me a rough range that started at a number I had never been attached to in my life and went higher than I was comfortable thinking about in her office. I walked back out to the parking lot and just stood there for a while, staring at Nate's trailer, like I'd forgotten how I got there. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell anybody except Nate, and even then I didn't tell him much. Partly because I'm superstitious, mostly because I knew exactly how it would go. If the sale underperformed, they'd say I'd been lying. If it did well, they'd start counting money that wasn't in my pocket yet. So I kept my mouth shut, took the specialist's referral, and consigned the lamp to a major auction house. Then I waited. That part gets left out when people talk about luck. The waiting, the second guessing. Wondering if the estimate will hold. Wondering if condition notes will scare people off. Wondering if the right two bidders will show up, or if the whole thing will land flat on the wrong day. While that was happening, life in my parents' house kept going exactly the way it had been. My mother still left job listings by the coffee maker. My dad still asked whether I'd heard back from anywhere even though he knew I hadn't applied anywhere. My sister texted me a warehouse opening once with the message, "Pride doesn't pay rent." I deleted it and didn't answer. I got quieter. I worked more. I bought smaller, safer things. I sold what I could. I stopped sitting around after dinner. I stopped explaining what I was doing or where I was going. The funny thing is, once you stop defending yourself, people act like you're the one making things weird. Auction day was in October. The lamp was late in the catalog, so the whole day felt ruined from the start. I tried working in the morning. I sorted stoneware in my storage unit. I answered 3 marketplace messages. I ate half a sandwich and tasted none of it. By the time my lot got close, I was sitting in my truck behind a gas station off the highway because I didn't want to be home with my family wandering in and out asking what I was doing. I had the live stream on my phone propped against the dash. When it opened strong. Then it kept going. I'm not going to turn this into fake play-by-play because that always sounds made up, but I remember enough. I remember the first number that was already better than I'd let myself hope for. I remember it pushing higher without stalling. I remember phone bidders staying in. I remember one moment where I thought it might die and it jumped again. By then I was leaning forward so hard my shoulders hurt. It hammered at $312,000. Not what I got to keep, obviously. Anybody who knows auctions knows that. There was commission, there were taxes, there were real numbers and adult problems still attached to the money. But even after all of that, it was life-changing. I sat in my truck for a long time after the hammer fell. I didn't yell. I didn't pound the steering wheel. I just sat there looking at my phone in my lap with my hands shaking, like my body was behind on the news. Then I called the auction house back, made sure I had everything straight, wrote down what I needed to write down, and drove home without telling anyone what had happened. I waited until the money cleared before I changed a thing. That took long enough to feel personal. Once it was real, I did the boring parts first. Taxes set aside immediately. Debts gone. All of them. I paid my mother every dime I owed her, including money she had fronted me months earlier for insurance. No speech, no little victory moment. Just cash in an envelope and a note with the amount written on it. Then I bought a small brick ranch outside town with a detached garage and enough room behind it to put up another building later. Nothing flashy. Bad carpet in 2 rooms. Ugly kitchen. But it was mine. The best thing about that house wasn't the house. It was the quiet. No comments when I carried in inventory. No one asking how much I'd wasted this time. No one acting like I needed permission to keep going. I turned the garage into workspace, added heavy shelving, upgraded my insurance, bought better lighting for photos, got serious about my website, my records, my shipping setup, my accountant. I got pickier about what I bought. Less random stuff. Fewer hope buys. More discipline. I built relationships with a couple of estate attorneys, a downsizing company, and an auction house that started kicking smaller material my way when it didn't fit their calendar. The lamp changed my life, but not in the dumb way people think. It didn't make me rich, and it didn't make the work disappear. What it did was give me room. Room to buy right. Room to say no. Room to stop living one bad week away from panic. My family's attitude changed almost immediately, and that was the part that got under my skin the most. Nobody apologized. Nobody said they had been wrong. They just started editing the past in real time. My mother began calling it your business instead of your little thing. My dad told one of his friends I was doing pretty well in antiques, like he'd always respected it. My sister suddenly wanted me to look at a few jewelry pieces she'd inherited. Uncle Kenny started telling people he'd known all along I had a good eye. Then the asks started. At first, it was small enough to hide. My sister asking if I knew anybody who might buy a ring because money was tight after they replaced their furnace. Her husband asking if I'd ever thought about going in on a truck with him for some side business idea. My mother mentioning the roof at my parents' house was getting old. A cousin wanting to borrow money for a month or two. None of them came right out with it at first. It was all soft, casual, fake. I said no politely. No, I'm not partnering on a truck. No, I'm not lending money to family. No, I'm not buying your ring because you ran your cards up. No, I'm not paying for a roof. The more I said no, the more offended they got, which told me exactly what they thought my role was supposed to be now. The final blow-up happened at Christmas. My mother asked me to come over early to help bring folding chairs in from the garage. When I got there, all the chairs were already inside. My dad was at the kitchen table. My sister and her husband were there. Uncle Kenny, too. I knew what it was before I took my coat off. My mother started talking in that careful voice she uses when she wants to sound reasonable while doing something ugly. She said everybody had had a hard year, and maybe as a family, we needed to look out for one another a little better. My sister already had tears in her eyes, which annoyed me more than it moved me, because she could always cry on time when she needed to. Her husband sat there with his hands clasped like this was a loan meeting at a bank. Then they laid it all out. Credit cards, roof, medical bill, truck transmission, kids' expenses, Christmas, everything. Not one small favor, not one emergency. Just a pile of their lives slid across the table toward me. I listened longer than I should have. Part of me still wanted one honest sentence from somebody. Just one. We treated you like a joke. We were wrong. We see that now. Instead, my brother-in-law finally said, "Look, man, you got lucky. Nobody's asking you to carry us forever. Just help your own people." Lucky. That word did it. Not because luck had nothing to do with it. It did. Of course it did. You need luck in this business. You need timing. You need the right house, the right day, the right eye, the right bidders. But hearing that from a guy who'd spent 2 years acting like I was a clown made my whole body go cold. I said no. Nobody moved. Then my mother said, "Don't be like that." I said, "Like what?" My sister jumped in. "Like you don't know Mom and Dad need help." I looked at her and said, "I know all of you suddenly need help from the guy you used to laugh at." That changed the room a little. Not enough. My dad leaned back and said, "Nobody laughed at you. We were worried about you." I said, "No, you were embarrassed by me." That landed harder than anything else I said. Probably because it was true. My mother started crying. Quiet at first. Uncle Kenny muttered something about how money changes people. My brother-in-law told me I was being selfish. At that point, I stopped trying to keep it clean. I told Kenny he could ask one of his real working man friends for money since he respected them so much. I told my brother-in-law that if normal jobs were the answer to everything, he should go find another one of those and leave me out of it. My sister started with the "it was just jokes" line, and I cut her off and said, "Yeah, It always becomes just jokes when you want something. None of this was elegant. I wasn't delivering some perfect speech. I was pissed off and tired and done. Then my sister said, "So you'd really let Mom and Dad struggle while you sit in that house?" And I said, "I paid what I owed in that house. I paid every dime. I don't owe the rest of you because you finally decided what I do counts." My brother-in-law stood up like he might make more of it, then didn't. Good decision. I picked up my coat. My mother told me not to leave like this. I said, "You should have thought about that before you all sat me down like I was an ATM." Then I left. My phone lit up the whole drive home. Calls, texts, group messages. An aunt who hadn't spoken to me in months suddenly wanted to explain family loyalty. I ignored almost all of it. I sent my mother one text that night. I told her I was done being the family embarrassment until somebody needed money. After that, I stopped answering for a while. It didn't turn into some huge, dramatic cutoff where I never saw any of them again. Real life's messier than that. I still talk to my parents once in a while, but not much, and never about money. My sister and I barely speak. Her husband can do whatever he wants as long as it's away from me. Uncle Kenny showed up at my place once without calling and looked around my garage like he was inventorying it for himself. I told him to get out. He acted offended. I didn't care. The business is steady now. Not glamorous. Not easy. Most weeks are still mostly work. Estate cleanouts, country auctions, dust, lifting, listing, packing, driving, research, passing on 10 things to buy one. Every now and then, I still walk into some dim room in a tired old house and get that feeling in my chest that says pay attention. I'm still waiting for the next great piece. Maybe it'll come, maybe it won't. That part of the business doesn't care what you deserve. What I do know is this. They had no problem treating me like an idiot when they thought I was failing. They only found respect once they thought there was something in it for them. I heard that loud and clear. So they can keep their normal jobs, their opinions, and their bills. I'll keep the house the lamp bought me, and the quiet that came with it.